Thank you, Andrew. Running to you.
We're good. All right.
And do you need the screen for
There's
the
no
slide?
need
Okay.
I think we're good. Everybody got to see things. So we are live at this point for our long-range planning committee meeting. Thanks everybody for coming. Got a straightforward agenda this evening. The first item being to approve the meeting minutes from last time. So you all received a copy of the draft minutes. And we'll follow our standard protocol here and just look to see if there's anyone with comments or recommended changes. Pause a moment. Seeing none. Meeting minutes be approved, finalized, and put up on the website. Thank you. So we'll start with the 2019 bond program. We have the fourth quarter 2025 report. You will notice that the report keeps getting a little thinner as much of the work has been completed. We're saving on printing costs and some of those things that we're not seeing much change at this stage. On that program summary sheet with the colored bar charts, you're seeing that we are well along in the bond, that yellow section being the paid to date. We've paid over $226 million of the total funding available out. We have just a few million additional of commitments, that is contracts that are in place, but the portion's not yet billed for. And then about 9.2 million uncommitted dollars. As a reminder for all, uncommitted does not mean that we don't have something that money is to be used for, simply that we haven't contracted the work yet. With the recent 2025 bond election, that provides some confidence to make sure that we can proceed with everything as planned. And so there will be some additional updates over the next year as we look to wrap up that program and spend out those dollars. We'll go into the couple of big projects not quite yet complete, but anything from committee members at kind of the program level, budget level, that sort of thing for 19 bond. Okay, seeing none. All right. Well, maybe we'll go slightly out of sequence and talk about the new primary school. Appreciate everybody coming for the project site inspection and tour this evening. Hope that was enjoyable for everyone and we're able to see what this growing red bar chart has been accomplishing out here for the district. I know several committee members have had a chance to see it over the course of construction. It's always exciting to see we're in that near complete stage. We're essentially down to punch list work that is, paint chips and, there's a large list of small things that the contractor has a few people going around and fixing. The exterior metal gates are getting painted. Final plantings are being installed, but it's fairly nominal work at this stage. The contractor applied for substantial completion, which is a very important milestone in the construction contract. It's where they're saying they are essentially complete with the principal work. And so there'll be a review here shortly to confirm that they've earned that milestone, which is super important. We have received temporary certificate of occupancy. So were we in August preparing for the fall to open, we could have school. And so it's great to have that milestone achieved and have all this time yet to be able to be prepared. As the committee saw, the furniture is in place, ready to receive students. You had the chance to meet the newly designated principal of the school this evening. And so we'll be working to support her and her growing team over the coming months as they prepare for next fall. Any questions around Frog Pond?
One.
Yeah.
My new word for today was the aluminum beam.
Glue lam beams, so that is glue laminated wood beams. So it's kind of an archetypical Northwest design style, is those large beams, and you can tell it's a whole bunch, it almost looks like a whole bunch of 2x6s stacked together, because it literally is. And they're engineered, and it's not your average glue holding them together. Very common structural element here in the Northwest.
I believe they're in the library.
Yep, primarily in the library.
And then how close is it budget forecast to be very close? I'm just curious, I'm just watching the lines because it's.
Yes. So the primary outstanding, question mark on the budget for this particular project is closing things out with the surety. You'll recall the termination of the general contractor, bringing the surety in to complete the project, a new contractor coming on board. The work with that group has been fantastic. They've been good partners overall. And there's just the usual, the surety, while they don't prefer the term, is more or less an insurance company. And so you're submitting claims for reimbursement of costs, and there's always some certain amount of back and forth. But overall, that process is going very smoothly. But construction management is a profession of risk management. And so we would hope to see a material amount of money not be needed from the current budget and be able to reallocate that to other outstanding projects and purposes under the bond. But we're not prepared to do that just yet, pending final conclusions with the surety. But again, everyone appears to be acting in good faith. Most requests for reimbursement are going through just right through. We're making sure to be very diligent and clear and make it easy for them to approve. And so, the hope is in the next 3 to 6 months that we'll be able to say, okay, we've gotten far enough, we've gotten enough reimbursement. Now we can settle in on where is the project budget line. But great question, most appropriate. Any other questions around the new primary school project? All right, seeing none. So we'll flip back then the page to the Athey Creek Middle School project. An interesting thing you'll see looking at your red bars of your spending curve is it actually goes down. So that is the result of a reimbursement request being paid with the City of West Linn. We've partnered with City of West Linn on some additional street improvements along the Willamette Falls Drive. A lot of that work has been completed. There are some outstanding things which we'll get to. But I checked in with city staff and we talked it through and found a reasonable, appropriate amount for a next installment. And so that's why you see we've spent less now than we had 3 months ago. For the most part, I think most folks just believe the project is done, complete. There is work outstanding. It's a lot of landscaping. It's a lot of things along the roadway. There's a lot of contractual paperwork and things where we did end up having to terminate that same contractor from this project. The surety and the district have emphasized resources on getting Frog Pond finished. At the time of termination, we didn't have all the roof on here. There was a lot of open ground without plantings and things, risk of erosion and all sorts of things. So we needed to get this project focused on first. Now we're in the active conversations with the surety about this spring and summer, getting that last bit of work completed out around Athey Creek. So I'm engaging with city staff periodically, letting them know. On the whole, the community's been great and understanding, hearing the story with the contractor, but also being understandably ready to get rid of some of that orange fence along the roadway there. So we've been connecting with a few folks, assuring them it is coming. But these processes are complex. So again, we're looking to work with that group, the same surety, to find that path to completing all the work and closing that up this summer. Any questions around Athey Creek? Okay. And then at the back there's the technology projects, as well as some budget around a few of those final projects. Not a lot of new detail there. Con, our IT director, continues to be working through plans for summer expenditures as well as completing the technology purchases for the Frog Pond School. You'll see up on the walls the kind of frisbees with antennas. So those are the wireless access points. So their crew has been coming through. They had long ago purchased a lot of the equipment, and then we've been sweeping through, getting things plugged in, turning them on, getting things programmed. Again, almost the entire wireless network in the on this campus is ready to go. Get connected right now. So, that's a budget that will trail off. We'll hope in the next year to complete all the tech purchases under that program. Of course, with the 2025 election passed, there's a new technology budget, and that next wave of projects are we're looking at. When do we replace the phone system? When do we update the network infrastructure? That group is doing that planning. And like I said a little bit ago, and over the next few months, as some of those big project things solidify, we'll be working with Jeff and the operations team on, okay, here's the few smaller 2019 projects that are left. What's the most urgent thing that you need? We had some conversation about a fire alarm today, things like that. And so we'll be looking at, hey, what are those final things that we need to hit the sprint button now that these big projects are getting done. So in the next, again, 3 and 6 months, we'll be updating the committee about those. All right. So that's kind of what I had around 19 bond. I'll just check with the group if there's any other questions around any of that. All righty. Then we'll transition over to,
Can I ask a bond question?
Please.
So what does the transition process look like? Do we just continue to flow, 2019 all of a sudden is just done? Is there like a date that it's set, or is it till it's done and then we start the next bond?
Great question. So the two different bond programs, 2019 and 2025 bond, they don't really have a relationship. They're not, my way of kind of personifying the bonds, they don't really interact with each other. There is a certain responsibility to proceed with and finish out a bond program over a period of time. So the goal would be in the next year or two that all 19 bond is spent. We want to get to that point where I check in with the business office and say, okay, I've got a $1,000 check and I've got $500 left of 19 bonds. So 19 bonds going to close, and then we got to cover, the last $500 to get that one closed out. So that's what we'll be working towards, again, in conversation with Jeff and his team about the best path for getting those 19 bonds wrapped up. Yeah, Jennifer.
But we may start on some projects under the 2025 bond before.
100%.
We've got a few very urgent things that were specifically noted
Oh, yeah.
in that bond.
Oh, yeah. So the next item on the agenda being 2025 bond. And again, speaking to how those two things are not connected, we're spending $2025 right now. Things are moving forward. The board has approved the sale of the bonds, the use of the bonds, the community voted, the board has, certified that election result, and we're moving forward. All kinds of things. You may have heard about synthetic turf occasionally if you're anywhere near high schools, right? So as I think Jennifer alluded to a little earlier, we had about a 2.5-hour conversation about the synthetic turf world and, how we, a lot of information about how we might specify the products that we're going to install for all these replacements and the new turf. So conversation about that are ramping up. And other things, again, dear to Jeff's heart, is things like we've got a replacement of a bunch of trash compactors on the 2025 bond. Well, 2 or 3 of them are in the shop. And it could be $10,000, $15,000 a piece to get them fixed. But if we've got approval to buy the unit, why don't we go ahead and do that? Save the district, the taxpayers, the money of repairing this aging unit that's wore out. Let's get it done. Maybe Jeff, maybe you might briefly note, I know there's a few themes like that.
Yeah, we have multiple trash compactors around the district, and they're 10 years old. The life on these really is 8 to 10 years. And until this bond passed, we were piecing them together. And remember one last year we repaired for $13,000, and it sort of becomes like an IQ test. It's like either lease it for $43,000 or, you know, it just doesn't make sense. And once this got passed, me and Rico started working on those type of items that we're putting money into that we don't need to. So we're working with our vendors right now. We got quotes and now it's just a matter of getting them here. So those are the type of things we're working on right now, just to make sure that the money's being good source of money.
Yeah, I mean, other things, you know, the district was really proud in 2010 to buy a whole bunch of vans and trucks. We had ones where you could literally watch the road go by through the floorboards. Well, we've got one or two that now we can do that with those units. The amount of miles and the heavy equipment these vehicles are hauling every day, they're wore out. And Jeff and Steve take them into the shop and it's like, you know, half the price of the van to rebuild the thing. Well, we had money deliberately for that purpose. It's another one we say, well, if there's a few cheap fixes, keep them all on the road, but let's get a few of those trucks rolling. Let's get the money here. Let's stop using the money to fix things that are at the end of their life. And so there's a number of areas where their team's looking at doing that sort of thing. So, yeah. That's one way where the spending, you know, the planning and the spending is already well underway. Things like synthetic turf, working on the specifications for that. We're hoping to replace as many as 5 turf fields carpet this next summer. So big logistics in that. We did do our first RFP of the program in December. And we selected our construction management firm that's going to help us through the program. That's Turner Townsend Heery. Committee members got to meet a couple of their representatives that have been helping us out here this evening. And so they will be coming on board to help us have that high-speed, effective launch of the program, develop the program schedule, how fast we're going to spend money, how much of the bonds we need to sell now, how many project managers are we going to need to accomplish the schedule, as a real thought partner and collaborator in building out how we're going to build the program. So, yeah.
How many companies responded to that RFP?
We had 3 companies respond to the RFP. Amy and I had received inquiries from maybe as many as 6 or more. And we had them come in and chat with us. We explained what was happening in the program, that this was an open opportunity, a genuine opportunity. 3 firms chose to submit. One firm called the week after and went, "Oh my goodness, did we miss that deadline?" Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. But we had a great conversation with them. We were excited to see what the proposal looked like. Most unfortunate. But it was made publicly available through the Daily Journal of Commerce, which is how we typically advertise our RFPs. It was a close run thing. It was a real competition. We had 5 committee members on that group. And it was a good couple hours of conversation after everyone had already done scoring. We came together, we had done interviews, and really debating, the merits of the different firms before making that final decision. So good process, a lot of great conversation. I think we ended up with the right group that's got capacity to support us through this program. So again, they're going to be helping us with all that ramp up. And as we start to define what that project team looks like on the district end, then we'll be turning towards other consultants. So architecture, various kinds of engineering, environmental, lots and lots of RFPs. And so by the time we get to a first 2025 bond official quarterly report, probably in July this year, you'll have a whole list of those things and reports from us on how that process, each process has gone and who was selected and work underway. All of that good stuff. Maybe I'll pause there and just ask any question about anything we just talked about or anything at all associated with 2025 bond. Anyone's got questions?
I've got a question.
Please.
It's from the Rocket Steve.
Yes.
So they want to know when can they start using the space at Bootsville?
Yes, they do. I may have been hearing from them already, which is great. It's such a great group of community members coming together, tons of volunteer time and material to support that team, and the stuff that group does is just exceptional. That said, I don't have a specific answer now. What I can tell you is it's definitely one of the projects, that conversion of that space at Lynns Ferry. That's one of those projects that we need to get the design going sometime this spring for what will likely be a construction project in the summer of 2027. There's enough complexity of design and permitting and things, and there's a number of other projects at Lynns Ferry in proximity that for efficiency, it makes sense to kind of bring those efforts together. Again, we're just starting into those packaging conversations. I expect that to be true. So then the next level of that question comes with, well, what about next school year? Might there be use? There was a comment or two at a recent Rotary meeting where the students came and presented some of how their robot works, and the conversation of, we're not sure at this time, but it may be that that's an opportunity depending on the school's need and everything. So I guess I don't have an answer, but there's the answer.
Yeah, the reason I asked is like they were wondering whether they could, the season this year, 25-26 just started this past weekend.
Yep.
So they were wondering, like, before we build out the field, can we build a full-on field? If we have the space, we can build a full field, and that makes practice much better.
Yeah, Jen?
Yeah, I was aware of the game opening last weekend, and it's had a particularly high climbing component to it, which is going to make some of the smaller practice spaces in the schools less practical. So we hear that question. In terms of bond, Reno's giving you the schedule in terms of could, with just our current community use, could the gym as is be available to them? We're gonna explore that and see what could be available and get back to both robotics teams next week.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other questions around 25 Pond?
Yeah, I guess my question is around, so now that the board has voted to consolidate the schools, and there were some projects that were listed at those particular schools.
Yep.
Will those projects continue as designed, or will those funds be allocated to the schools that will see an influx of students to make them more capacity and to meet the needs of more students coming to those schools?
Sure.
Or how does that get decided?
Yeah. So a huge question that's gone through that whole conversation about potentially consolidating schools. And again, there's not an exact answer at this point, but the district is very aware of those interests. Some of those projects are simply required to keep the building in good condition, at least some amount of roofing replacement and things like that, to just make sure that we don't get problems that compromise the buildings into the future. And so we'll need to go through a process of kind of assessing which projects fall more in that category versus, do we do a full-on restroom renovation at a school that's not open, right? That's more of a question. And then for the administration, and at some point the board to have that conversation about, perhaps once boundaries are completed, that process is underway now. With that process underway, that gets done. There's now a sense of which, where students are attending into the future. And I think that will spur some more of that conversation. How do those dollars flow? There's definitely been signals of interest in dollars following students, right? So if a percentage of one school is now, their attendance boundary is now at another, it may make sense to utilize some of those resources there to help improvements and have the money sort of follow the students. So nothing's decided at this point, but that's certainly part of the conversation. No, that doesn't totally answer, but does that?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Give us
knowing the district's thinking about it and sort of the thought process behind it, I think that's helpful. And the public also realizing that there are people thinking about it that sort of thinking about that.
Yeah, actively. And of course, step one being, don't allow those facilities, those significant investments and resources to be compromised through ill intention. Right?
So if enrolling goes in the future, is there a possibility that schools might open again as schools in the future?
We will do nothing to prevent it for that. So yes, it's, We don't expect that in anywhere in the near term. But someday, the idea is keep the building in good order such that with some planning, if development really kicks back up and there's a need, that facilities could be made available.
Yeah, here you don't want the building to go into disrepair, but I didn't know why. I didn't know if it was to sell it, to reuse it for a different purpose, to reuse it as schools. Maybe that's not known. But that's essentially what my question was, why are we, for what purpose?
Yeah, the idea is to continue to have it available as a district resource. There's no conversation about selling buildings or demolishing buildings or any of that. There is some question about what use might the buildings have that's happening. The board has expressed interest, community members have expressed interest, talk about, a preschool program is canceled. And so some of those, conversations are starting to happen. But as with so many of those things, it's all very, very recent. But there's a lot of careful thought going into how to make good use of the resources available. If that makes sense.
Is there any thought about using them as rental properties, like some other schools, charter schools, or smaller schools that would like to rent those properties?
I don't know, Jennifer, if you have any thoughts on it, the idea of potentially making some use of facilities is out there. I think that might be the safe way to describe it.
I think it would also be safe to say that in a time where we're really valuing the enrollment of each and every child in our schools, we probably would not be opening up to competitive situations towards our enrollment. I think that's something that superintendent and the board have already talked about, but there may be openness to discussing other potential uses that aren't in competition with the district, but could be complementary in some way.
And the idea of a material component of those consolidation conversations being budget, making sure that in any case, any use of facilities is not to the detriment of the budget. Anything else, either direct to 2025 bond, or there's a lot of big moving pieces in the district, a lot of curiosity in the community, so it's a great opportunity. Any other thoughts, questions anyone has?
Maybe just a larger question. At this point, I've been here about a year and a half, I think now. Since coming on, we were halfway through the long-range plan, which was a lot of work, and then we went to the bond, the bond passed. So what should we expect? Maybe being kind of new, like what's the next season? Is it really going to be mostly focused on the oversight of the 2025 bond? Is that what we can expect over the next few quarters?
Yeah. The hope would be that 2026 is really about, overseeing that launch of the 2025 bond program, seeing the future of that 19 bond concluding, coming into full clarity, having quarterly meetings, more regularly interspersed things. I think the committee, it's reasonable for the committee to expect that to be more the tempo of this year. Some of the excitement of the last few years has come as a little surprise at certain times, so things sometimes come up. But I think that's the expectation at this time, that, the consolidation of schools that has happened, that boundary process just launched. Great conversation, a great group, very thoughtful, asking, it's like I often compliment this group, asking thoughtful, challenging questions, because that's the question that needs answering, but doing so with a spirit of wanting to learn, wanting to understand, a willingness to, believe what we're telling you. And so, that process will come through, and at that point then, for the purposes of this committee, again, it's really, that 25 bond oversight, in April when we meet again, probably a lot of conversation about the quarterly report format. This is the format we've been using for the last 2 bond programs. It's been successful, been useful. The nature of the projects on this program is such that we're not quite sure how that front page looks when it's not as easy to just make 7 line items. Because it in many cases, like a Boone's Ferry potentially, where there's that robotics project, but it'll probably make sense to contract the restrooms at the same time and the roofing and some of the mechanical equipment. And so how we package that up in a way that, can be conveyed to the community, to this committee, that's gonna be a lot of the thinking and working that we're gonna be doing in the next 3 to 6 months. Making sure that we've got that transparency, that you all feel like you get the information to where you can confidently have someone go to the board each quarter and say, we talked to staff, we got the questions, we got the data, we're confident that bond funds are being spent in, as intended. So that'll be kind of the next couple of quarters, just kind of fine tuning that conversation. Yeah. Mary, I think
That was my question.
well, there you go. Great minds think alike. Well, as always, I'm happy to talk as long as anyone's willing to stay. But I want to be courteous with the time. I know we got a little, start earlier with our walk around the building tonight. So any other thoughts, questions about things going around the district before we head on for our evenings? All right. Ellen, am I forgetting anything?
No, I don't think so. This is kind of that like calm before we really get going and also ramping down before we really ramp up, so hence the tour.
Yeah.
I have one additional one. There was a lot of stuff on the 2025 bond. And I know that you're working through which projects are first and prioritizing. When do you think there'd be an update on that, the next quarterly report, or?
Great question. So something we shared with the district leadership forum group in December. The goal is by the time we're into April, May, that we'll have a lot of that basic outline there. We'll be able to communicate that out to the community. We'll be able to have meetings with principal teams and let them see like, okay, this is, when you have questions from your school community, here's what you can kind of expect in broad terms. So yeah, we may have some updates at the next meeting. But really that July meeting of this year will be the time where things will kind of start to lock in.
So do you, for this summer, is anything anticipated other than purchasing like trash compactors and equipment? Like, would any construction be starting in the summer?
And turf fields.
Turf fields. Turf fields being one of those highlights.
I would expect in our April meeting that we'll talk about the things that will be going for this summer.
Yeah.
If we don't know that by our April meeting, it's too late.
Yeah. Yes.
So I would anticipate in April, we'll talk about what's happening summer of '26. And then kind of have an idea of where we are on some of those projects we want to launch that we haven't fully got there yet. And then like Remo said, in July, it'll be, here we go.
So then in like the April meeting, then we'll be able to start letting the community know what would be done for the start of the fall.
Yes,
If
what they can
anything's
expect to
impacting the
see
school
for the
or-
summer when they show back up in the fall. And they have to, yes.
That would be exciting.
Yes, oh, yes.
Thank you.
Exciting is the word. It's gonna be fun. All right. Well, if there's not anything else, we can let you all go for the evening. But again, really, really appreciate it. Glad you were able to make it to do our little site visit earlier. Great to talk through this and excited to be talking over the rest of this year as this thing really takes off. All right. As always, if there's interest, we talked about some site visits to other locations. Once we knew that we were going to be able to do this year, we said, well, let's just do this. And then, we'll start over the next few months, start saying, okay, we're going to go visit this and this school and, who's got openings when and kind of set a few times. So, and hopefully over the next, by the time the school year ends, hit those tours that folks were looking.
Yeah, I want to apologize for not reaching out about scheduling. When we knew the small schools was going to be a thing, we wanted to kind of pause on having people just wandering through all the schools and trying to keep that in mind. I think the holidays, obviously. So.
I'm interested in seeing Riverside too, because I've probably never seen the final.
Oh, goodness.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I love the whole section tour.
Right?
Yeah.
What are you doing tomorrow? You're on sabbatical, we can go now. But you're staying here though, because you love this space. With your schools and,
I know what I'm going to go find now.
yeah. Mary's gonna go back to schools now.
Excellent.
Not the.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I think at that point, we'll call the meeting. I can turn the stream off and chat another moment. Just again, appreciate your participation and look forward to talking all more with you more.
don't have to study
You
all
will feel like we have some sort of.
Somebody's gonna come by.
Yeah.
We talked about that, like, it's all we do is food and then trash for the next 3 months.